Hey there, tech fans. Welcome back to the Flaskr tutorial on flask.pelletsproject.com. We're up to the 7th chapter in the tutorial, the blog blueprint. That's after we just finished the static files. The blog blueprint is pretty lengthy, so we're going to get right into it. It says blog blueprint. You'll use the same techniques you learned about when writing the authentication blueprint to write the blog blueprint. The blog should list all posts, allow logged-in users to create posts, and allow the author of a post to edit or delete it. As you implement each view, keep the development server running. As you save your changes, try going to the URL in your browser and testing them out. The blueprint. Define the blueprint and register it in the application factory. So we're going to go into the blog.py file in the Flaskr directory, and from Flask, we'll import blueprint, flash, g, redirect, render underscore template, request, and the URL underscore for packages. From worksurg.exceptions, we're going to import abort, and from the auth login underscore required, right here, there we go, login underscore required, that's what we're going to be importing. And then from the DB file that we created in the Flask directory, we're going to be importing get underscore DB. That's this one right here. And then we're going to create a BP variable, and we're going to assign it the blueprint function, which we pass as the first argument the string blog. That's the name of the blueprint. And then the second argument is dunder name. Import and register the blueprint from the factory using app.register underscore blueprint function. Place the new code at the end of the factory function before returning the app. So if we go into init.underscore, we're going to add this just before the return app, and that is from space dot space import blog app.register underscore blueprint in parens blog.bp app.add underscore URL underscore rule, and then in parens the first argument is slash, the second argument is endpoint equals quotes index. So that's the dunder init.py file update that's in the Flaskr directory. Unlike the auth blueprint, the blog blueprint does not have a URL underscore prefix, so the index view will be at slash, the create view at slash create, and so on. The blog is the main feature of Flaskr, so it makes sense that the blog index will be the main index page. However, the endpoint for the index view defined below will be blog.index. Some of the authentication views refer to a plain index endpoint. app.add underscore URL underscore rule function associates the endpoint name index with the slash URL. So that URL underscore for quote index or URL underscore quote blog.index will both work, generating the same slash URL either way. In another application, you might give the blog blueprint a URL underscore prefix and define a separate index view in the application factory, similar to the hello view. Then the index and blog.index endpoints and URLs would be different. Index. The index will show all of the posts, most recent first. A join is used so that the author information from the user table is available in the result. So in the blog.py file, which is in the Flaskr directory, we're going to have a decorator @bp.route, and we'll pass it the slash, and then we define the index function, and that's going to have a variable db. We're going to assign that the get underscore db function. Then we're going to have a variable posts, and we're going to assign that db.execute function, and we'll pass that uppercase select p.id title body created author underscore ID username, and then from post p join user u on p.author underscore ID equals u.id order by created DESC or descending. So that ends our SQL query that we're passing to db.execute. And then we chain onto that the fetch all function. Then we return render underscore template, and we pass it the string blog/index.html. The second parameter is posts equals posts. Then in the index.html file, which is in the blog directory, in the templates directory that's in the Flaskr directory, we're going to curly braces %, extends base.html. And then curly braces %, we're going to have a block for the header. Inside that, we're going to have an h1. Inside the h1, we're going to have a curly braces % block for the title. And then we're going to have the text posts, and we're going to end that block for the title, and we're going to end the h1. Then in curly braces %, we're going to have an if condition, if g.user, and then inside that we're going to have an a tag, class equals action, href equals, double curly braces, URL_4, in parens we'll pass the blog.create string, and we end the double curly braces. Close the quote, close the a tag. We have the new text inside the a tag, and we close the a tag. Then in curly braces %, we end the if statement. In the curly braces %, we end the header block. Next block in curly braces %, is the content block. Inside that, curly braces %, for post in posts. Inside that, we have an article with the class post. Inside the article, we have a header tag. Inside a header, we have a div. Inside div, we have an h1. Inside the h1, we have double curly braces, post, brackets, we pass it title. Close the double curly braces, close the h1. In a div tag, we have the text by, double curly braces, post, brackets, username, close the double curly braces. The text on, double curly braces, post, brackets, pass it the string created. Then dot strf time, and then we pass strf time the string %y dash %m dash %d, that's year, month, date, and then we close the double curly braces, we close the div. So that's the value for the post title by. We have another curly braces %, if g.user, brackets pass it the string id, equals post, brackets pass the string author underscore id, then we will pass it an a tag that has an href. We pass that double curly braces URL_4, parentheses, first parameter blog.update, the second parameter id equals post, brackets, we pass it the id. Close the end if. Close the header. We now have a paragraph tag. Inside that we have the post body in double curly braces. Then we close the article. Then we have another if condition. If not loop last, we give it an HR or a horizontal line. End if. Then we end the for, and we end the block. When a user is logged in, the header block adds a link to the create view. When the user is the author of a post, they'll see an edit link to the update view for that post. Loop.last is a special variable available inside Jinja for loops. It's used to display a line after each post, except the last one, to visually separate them. Create. The create view works the same as the auth register view. Either the form is displayed or the posted data is validated and the post is added to the database, or an error is shown. The login_required decorator you wrote earlier is used on the blog views. A user must be logged in to visit these views. Otherwise, they will be redirected to the login page. So we're back in the blog.py file, which is in the Flaskr directory. We're going to add a decorator, bp.route. We're going to give it a /create path. The second parameter is methods equals in params uppercase get, comma, uppercase post. Then we have another decorator, login_required, and then we define the create function. If request.method equals post, then title equals request.form, we pass it title, then body equals request.form, we pass it body, and then error equals none. If not title, error equals, and we pass it string title is required. If error is not none, then we flash the error. Else, db equals get_db function, db.execute, we pass it the SQL query, insert into post, first parameter is title, second is body, the third is author_id. Values, we pass it question mark, question mark, question mark. And then the next parameter in parentheses, title, body, g.user, we pass it the ID. Then we db.commit function. We return the redirect and we pass it the URL_4, we pass that the blog.index string. Now we're out of the if condition, and at the end of the function create, we return render_template, and we pass it the string blog/create.html. So that's the blog.py edition that we just did. Next, we have the create.html, and that's in the blog directory, which is in the templates directory in the Flaskr directory. We start with curly braces percentage extends base.html. Curly braces percentage, the block header. Inside that, we have the h1, the block title, the text new post, and we end the block. We end the h1, and we end the block header. Next is the block content, and there we put a form with the method equals post, has a label for title, it has an input for title, the value is request.form, we pass it title, and that is required. The next label is for body. There's a text area, the ID equals body, the name equals body, and then in double parens we have request.form, we pass it the string body, close the double parens, close the text area. Then we have an input tag, and the type is submit, and the value is save. We close the form, we end the block. Next section is update. Both the update and delete views will need to fetch a post by ID and check if the author matches the logged in user. To avoid duplicating code, you can write a function to get the post and call it from each view. An update section. Both the update and delete views will need to fetch a post by ID and check if the author matches the logged in user. To avoid duplicating code, you can write a function to get the post and call it from each view. So now we're in the blog.py file again in the Flaskr directory. We're going to define a new function as get_post. The first parameter we pass is the ID. The second parameter is check_author equals true. And the first property of this get_post function is post equals get_db function dot execute, and then we pass it the SQL query select p.id title body created author_id username from post p join user u on p.author_id equals u.id where p.id equals ? And then the next parameter in that execute call is in parentheses ID and a comma. We close the get_db function .execute parameters, and we chain onto that the fetch1 function. If post is none, abort, and then we pass 404. The second parameter is f quotes post ID in brackets ID doesn't exist. And then if check_author and post brackets author_id is not equal to get.userid, then abort 403. Then we return the post. So below that, we have an explanation. The abort function will raise a special exception that returns an HTTP status code. It takes an optional message to show with the error, otherwise a default message is used. 404 means not found, and 403 means forbidden. 401 means unauthorized, but you'll redirect to the login page instead of returning that status. The check_author argument is defined so that the function can be used to get a post without checking the author. This would be useful if you wrote a view to show an individual post on a page, where the user doesn't matter because they're not modifying the post. So now we're back in the blog.py file in the Flaskr directory, and now we're going to add another decorator, bp.route, and we're going to pass it the slash in angle brackets int:/ID /update. Second parameter is methods equals in parens uppercase get, comma, uppercase post. Then we have a second decorator, login_required, and then we define the update function. It's update, and we pass it the ID. First property is post, and we assign that the get_post in parens ID function. If request.method equals post, then the title is going to equal request.form title, the body is going to equal request.form body, and the error is going to equal none. If not title, error equals, pass it the string, title is required. If error is not none, then we're going to flash the error. Else, db is assigned the get_db function. db.execute is assigned the SQL statement update post set title equals ? Comma, body equals ? Where ID equals ? Then the second parameter to that execute function is in parentheses title, comma, body, comma, ID. That ends the execute parameters, and now we go to db.commit function, and then after the db.commit function we return redirect, and we pass it URL_4, we pass that the string blog.index. So that closes the if request.method equals post condition, and at the end of the update function that we're defining, we return render underscore template, and we pass it the string blog/update.html, and the second parameter is post equals post. So that takes care of the blog.py update. Unlike the views you've written so far, the update function takes an argument ID. That corresponds to the angle bracket int:_id in the route. A real URL will look like /1/update. Flask will capture the 1, ensure it's an int, and pass it as the ID argument. If you don't specify int:, and instead do angle brackets ID, it will be a string. To generate a URL to the update page, URL_4 needs to be passed the ID, so it knows what to fill in. URL_ first parameter blog.update string, comma, ID equals post brackets ID. This is also in the index.html file above. The create and update views look very similar. The main difference is that the update view uses a post object and the SQL query update query instead of an insert query. With some clever refactoring, you could use one view and template for both actions, but for the tutorial, it's clear to keep them separate. So now we're going to move on to the update.html file, and that's in the blog directory, in the templates directory, in the Flaskr directory. And so update.html in curly braces percentage, it extends the base.html file, and then curly braces percentage, the block header contains h1 tag, curly braces percentage block title, and then the text edit, and then double curly braces post brackets string title, and then we end the block, we end the h1, we end the block header. Block content contains a form with a method equals post. There's a label for the title. There's an input field for the title. The value for the input field is double curly braces request.form brackets, we pass it title, or post brackets, we pass it title, and the double curly braces. And then that's required. That ends the input tag. Next we have a label for the body, and there's a text area tag. The name is body, the ID is body, and we pass a double curly braces request.form brackets, we pass it body, or post brackets, we pass it body, and the double curly braces. Then we have an input, and it's a submit, and the value is save. We end the form. There's an HR to separate this form from another form. This form is action equals, double curly braces, URL_4, we pass it the string blog.delete. The second parameter is ID equals post, brackets, we pass it ID, and then we close the double curly braces. This method is also post. Inside this form, we have an input. There is a type submit, and the value is delete. On click, we return confirm, are you sure? And then we close the form. We end the content block. So that's it for the update.html file. This template has two forms. The first posts the edited data to the current page, /angle brackets ID /update. The other form contains only a button and specifies an action attribute that posts to the delete view instead. The button uses some JavaScript to show a confirmation dialog before submitting. The pattern double curly braces request.form brackets passing in the title, or post brackets pass the title, is used to choose what data appears in the form. When the form hasn't been submitted, the original post data appears. But if invalid form data was posted, you want to display that so the user can fix the error. So request.form is used instead. Request is another variable that's automatically available in templates. Now we're in the delete section. The delete view doesn't have its own template. The delete button is part of update.html and posts to the /angle bracket ID /delete URL. Since there is no template, it will only handle the post method and then redirect to the index view. We're back in the blog.py file in the Flaskr directory, and we have a decorator at py.route, and we pass it the string /angle bracket int::id /delete. The second parameter is methods equals, we pass it post with a comma. There's another decorator at login_required. Then we define the delete function. We pass the delete function ID, and then the first property is get_post. We pass it the ID. The second property is db equals get_db function. The next property is db.execute. We pass it, the first parameter is an SQL query, delete from post where ID equals question mark. The second parameter in parentheses is ID with a comma. That ends the execute. The fourth property of the delete function is db.commit function. That ends the delete function assignment, and we return redirect, and we pass it URL_4. We pass that the string blog.index. Congratulations! You've now finished writing your application. take some time to try out everything in the browser. However, there's still more to do before the project is complete. So that ends our section for blog blueprint, and we're going to continue next onto the Make the Project Installable chapter.